We are glad to have you as always. Catch, where do you want to start on the football convo?
God, well, you know what? Let's start with Michigan and Alabama. Because, John, one of the things that's got me thinking that Michigan has a chance in this game is that we've had conversations with you throughout the season, and Michigan will pop up, and you're like, guys, those two corners, they are legit. And we start going like through their personnel, and they've got a bunch of future pros. And then it's like, well, those guys feel disrespected. And I think Alabama wins this game. But there's been a lot of people who are like, I think Alabama's going to smoke Michigan. And I'm like, I actually think there's a better chance that Michigan wins the game than Alabama just smokes them. And I think a lot of it is based on, we just have talked to you, and I know you have a lot of respect for Michigan, and it's hard for me to look at Michigan and think that they don't have a chance when I know they got a bunch of pros.
Well, that to me is the one thing. Like, if one of the main things that I look at going into a college season is what you just said, Jeff, right at the very end, how many pros you got. Because you got pros, you got ballers. I mean, you got guys that can go. And that's why I felt like Texas was due for a really good season, because unless they completely screwed it up or Sark did something wrong or whatever, because they had so many pros and high-level pros. Like, man, Texas can't screw this up, can they? If they do, boy, Sark is really in trouble. And he didn't. Not only did he not screw it up, he made them better. And now they're playing a playoff game. As it pertains to Michigan, they've got pros at every level, at every position on that team, starting with J.J. McCarthy at quarterback. I don't know that people give McCarthy a lot of credit for what he's done this year. And he doesn't have to be the star. But when he is the star, Michigan's offense is that much more difficult to stop. Now, I don't think either team, other than Alabama facing Texas, I don't know that Alabama has faced a team like Michigan. And Michigan definitely has to face a team like Alabama, because I don't think ultimately Ohio State was all as talented this year as they've been. I thought the offensive line was kind of a mess. I thought the defensive line has got a player or two, but it wasn't like a line that had Nick Bosa a few years ago with Chase Young on the other side. They weren't that talented. These teams are seeing arguably the most talented team they're going to see all year, other than Texas facing Alabama. So I think that's one of the questions is, at what level is that pro talent going to play for Michigan? And I think that's one of the biggest things. But for Michigan, they don't need hero ball from J.J. McCarthy. And I think that's one of the most important things. You don't need hero ball from J.J. McCarthy, so you can rely on Blake Corum. You can rely on Donovan Edwards. But if you do have to get to McCarthy for a play or two, hey, man, we need you on this 3rd and 9, he can deliver. And Alabama's defense, I thought this year, got better as the year wore on. It got better as Terry and Arnold started playing better at corner opposite McKinstry. And then Caleb Downs playing better. So I think the secondary got better as the year went on, but I still think the linebackers are vulnerable. And I think the defensive front, having Dallas Turner is great, but I just see, I don't want to call them Jags, but I see good. Braswell's good, but the interior guys are okay. But I think the linebackers can really be exposed. And Michigan's got to find a way to do that with Corum and with Donovan Edwards. So, Ketch, I'm with you. You outlined it perfectly. All these people talking about Alabama's going to smash Michigan. I think they're looking at the last 2 playoff games. They're looking at a Michigan team that stole signals and all that kind of stuff. Look, Alabama needed a few minor miracles to get in this game. Oh, well, they beat Georgia. Yeah. How flawed was Georgia by the end of the year? Now, I thought Georgia was going to win the game, but how flawed was Georgia by the end of the year? Couldn't run it. Really couldn't get the ball to the receivers when Matt McConkey was hurt. So, yeah, it was a great win for Alabama, but I can't sit here and say that Alabama is more talented than Michigan. Not at all. In fact, I think it's the other way around. I think Michigan's talent and depth is better. It's just a matter of, can McCarthy and Michigan make plays in the 4th quarter to slow down Alabama's offense? Can they slow down Jalen Milroe and keep him from playing hero ball? Because really, that's the only way I think Alabama wins this game. If Jalen Milroe is given all kinds of time to throw, he turns into Vince Young out the Rose Bowl. That's really, to me, the way that Alabama wins this game. I do think he'll make some plays and Alabama will win it close, but in no way, shape, or form can I see Alabama blowing Michigan out.
John, to stay with those quarterbacks, let's go to Milroe here. And I thought of you when I knew we were going to talk to you anyway. I see Jalen Milroe talk about the position thing and referencing, Coach O'Brien and all that. And I thought, well, John Harris knows Bill O'Brien pretty well. And I'm wondering, what is your guy O'Brien thinking when his quarterback does that? Alabama's taken an interesting path to get ready for this game. What'd you think of Milroe? It felt like he was cleansing himself of something in this press conference. I'm just wondering how it might affect that team.
Yeah, I don't know how it affects them on Monday in the game or not, but I know what I've seen from Jalen Milroe this year. It's when I heard those comments, I thought back to him playing in that Texas game, and I thought about what his confidence must have been like in that Texas game, and basically at about a 0, because he's got a quarterback's coach and coordinator from the year before saying, "You shouldn't even be playing quarterback, bro. This shouldn't even be you." What Jalen Milroe has to understand, and I'm sure he's probably been told this by a few people along the way, that Jalen Milroe is probably the 857th person that has heard a version of what he said to Jalen Milroe. Oh, you can't do that. You're not good enough to do that. I mean, I experienced it in my own world here. Well, no, you can't do that. No, that's not going to happen. There's so many people that ran into that sort of thinking. And I just have never been of that thinking. Now, I can look at a guy and say, you know what, I think you're better suited for this position. But you know what? If you want to go all in, this is what you're going to need to do. Steps 1, 2, 3. I remember talking to Carl Nassib. I know people aren't going to remember that name. Carl Nassib was a defensive lineman at Penn State, and he was a freshman when O'Brien took over. And I remember talking to Nassib 3 years later after Nassib won the Lombardi Award. And he's like, oh, yeah, Bill O'Brien told me I couldn't play at Penn State. That I wasn't going to be able to make plays at Penn State, that I should have never come to Penn State, should have gone somewhere else. He's like, if you're going to play at Penn State, here are things you're going to have to do. And Nassib said, I'm going to do that plus. So I was not surprised when I heard all of that. I don't appreciate that way of going about motivating or telling the truth. I mean, basically, a guy like that says those things and says, well, I'm just telling you the truth. I'm just telling you the truth. No, you're basically being a butthead. I would say it stronger, but I don't try not to use bad words on radio, podcasts, etc. You're just being a butthead because if you can't look at Jalen Milroe and go, "Oh, that guy can't play quarterback." Well, yeah, maybe he can't play for you in your system, and that's the only way you can see football. If you were a good coach, you would have made something of him when he was playing for you. So thank God that Tommy Rees took over, believed in Jalen Milroe, and basically Jalen Milroe believing in himself. And so I loved him standing up and saying, yeah, they didn't believe in me, so I use it as motivation. Love it. Absolutely, because the rest of his teammates are like, the rest of his teammates may not have known that story. They may not have known that Bill O'Brien told him that. Now they're looking at him going, bro, yeah, I'm with you now. Let's go. Like, hearing that about a teammate of mine and seeing success for that guy after he'd been told that by a previous coach, I would have been all about being on that guy's train. And that might be the one thing that really kind of galvanizes Alabama in some sense, such that they're like, man, let's rally around this dude. I mean, he was told he couldn't do it, and now look at him. He's led us here. Let's help him out against this tough Michigan defense. So I loved it. I absolutely loved him stepping up and saying, you know what, bleep you, I did this. I did this. We did this. Now watch me. Because, Coach O'Brien's had to do that a lot of times and watch a lot of people prove him wrong.
John, let's go to Texas and Washington. One of the things – Chad and I have reached the point where we've talked about this game so much that now we're second guessing all the things that we've talked about. And we've been talking all day about the pathway for Texas to win this game, and we can't decide, should they blitz? Should they just rush 4? How big of a difference does it make that Jalen McMillan is on the field, and does it render everything else that the scouting reports tell you? Because when that guy comes back, you're just a different offense. I think I'm just going to start here. For you, the pathway for Texas to win this game on Monday night is what?
Well, I'm going to actually ask you just a question. Just go with me. Who would you say is Texas' best cover guy?
Malik Muhammad, the true freshman.
Okay. I put Muhammad on McMillan, one-on-one. And then I take my second best cover guy, or third best, or whomever, and I give him help all day over at Dunze. I've seen the Patriots do that a lot with Belichick. Belichick will take his number 1 cover guy and put him on the number 2 wide receiver man-to-man and play man-to-man all night. Because that number 2 wide receiver ain't getting open against the number 1 cover guy. So we used to see this with Hopkins. So DeAndre Hopkins was our number one. Will Fuller's number two at that time. Not great, but still. So he would take Malcolm Butler, and he would put Butler on Fuller, his number one guy. Then he would take Logan Ryan and put Ryan on Hop, let Ryan beat up Hop all game, but give him help over the top. Now, there's a third part of this, and that's Jalen Polk. Polk can end up being, I don't want to say he's, third wheel. He's as good as any third wheel you're going to find. That does complicate things. But I would put my best cover guy on McMillan. I would double Odunze and take that away. And I would force Penix every time that he leaves the pocket to go right. Force him to go right. He does not like to go right and throw. If he starts right, he eventually works his way back left to be able to go throw from his left-handed side. So that's going to be one thing that Texas has to adjust to early on, is that. Make sure that Penix is moving left. And also, that ball is going to arrive faster than any team they've faced this year. Nobody else throws the ball like Penix. Quinn Ewers has got a tremendous arm. The ball will not get there any quicker from Ewers than it does from Penix. So that's going to be one thing. And it's coming from a lefty. So they got to adjust to that a little bit. But that's how I go about covering those guys. And I would make sure that my rush forces him to the right side. Force him right. I would send my overload blitzes from the defensive right to make sure he goes that way. I got to do that, because if I get him going right and I get him out of the pocket, I'm winning the ball game. I am winning the ball game, point blank, end of story. But as crazy as it sounds, the absolute most important thing in this game is to eliminate Dillon Johnson. Eliminate Dillon Johnson. And I think they can do that with their four-man front. I know Washington's offensive line won the Joe Moore Award. I think it's a good line. I think Fontana is really good at left tackle. I think he'll be a right tackle or guard at the next level. He's a really good player. I think the inside guys, Brailsford is a freshman. I think that Murphy and Sweat can run roughshod through that interior three. And that shuts out Dillon Johnson. And if they eliminate Dillon Johnson and then all of a sudden put the game all on Penix, now you got him exactly where you want him. Kwiatkowski can run as many different games and blitzes as he wants, doubling Odunze, man-to-man, with some help for the other two, depending on what you're going to drop into coverage, and change the picture for Penix as much as possible. But move him right. Get him moving right. Make sure your coverages kind of match that, so that if he goes right, make sure your coverage is playing that way. If he gets back left, he's going to hurt you. So if you eliminate Dillon Johnson's impact on that side of the ball, and then you make Penix move right and out of the pocket, then I think there is really it's going to be very difficult for Washington to move the ball. Offensively, I don't know what Washington can really take away from Texas. I really don't. I think 91 is a pretty good interior guy. Not great. They've got to block Trice 8. He's a solid player coming off the edge. But I'll bank on Texas tackles being able to do that. Other than that, in the secondary, it's a solid group, not great. I think Mish Powell is probably the best guy. I would imagine he'll see Worthy. I think Mitchell could end up having a bang-up day, because I don't know who else matches up with Mitchell. I think Texas wins this by a touchdown. That's going to be my prediction, because I don't think Washington can run the ball on Texas, and I don't know that Washington's secondary can really slow down all the different weapons that Texas has. I think Texas defense can at least slow down Washington's weapons, but you can't let Penix turn it into, I'm going left, playground football. Yeah. If he wants to go playground football, you force him the other way, and then he's got no chance.
That's great stuff, John. Let me turn it around on you a little bit. You talked a little bit about the Texas offense. So if you're walking into that Washington defensive room and you're talking about Ewers, what do you see from Ewers as he's developed through the season, and what would you tell the Huskies? I mean, as bad as Texas's pass defense looks at 95th, Washington's at 120 in terms of pass defense. So you've said it's going to be tough for them. What do they need to do? What stands out to you about Ewers and maybe how to attack him?
Well, I think with Ewers, ball coming out of his hand quickly is at the beginning of the game, just to get him in a rhythm and let him work into that rhythm. I think the Alabama game obviously is the one we go back to. And in that game, he made a couple of plays early, and it felt like it got his confidence. And then Alabama, I don't want to say panicked, but then they started to play man coverage on guys they couldn't play man coverage against. They couldn't play man coverage against Worthy or Mitchell, and those guys started hurting them with some big plays down the field. For Washington to have some success, I think the biggest thing that they've got to do is take away any explosives. They got to put a cap on anything deep because they really can't match up with Worthy and Mitchell at all. I think Texas has a better chance against Washington's wide receivers than the other way around. But they have to take away the explosives. And Quinn can't get impatient. They've got out routes called, take the out route. You take profit whenever you got it. 1st and 10, first down situations. If they give you the check down for 5, take it. You can't get greedy. You can't get stupid. And you can't take you can't take bad risks. And I think if Ewers does that and just plays a game that kind of comes to him, hey, Washington's giving me this. Okay, I'm going to take that. Because the longer he does that, then he'll get what he wants later. Because if he starts hurting them with the intermediate game, if he starts working the middle of the field with his tight ends, if those guys are healthy, the tight ends could play a decent role in this game. I'm not sure how Washington wants to even cover them. But if you take what they're giving you early, you'll get what you want late because they'll start to get impatient. And especially if the defense is throwing straps over those Washington receivers, then you got an opportunity where Washington's going to start taking, okay, we got to blitz him. We got to heat him up. We can't let him sit in the pocket. I would imagine Washington early on will make him throw into coverage. I think that's a lot more difficult to do in a big game setting. We're going to force you to throw into coverage. We're going to rush 4. We're going to rely on Trice getting there. And we're going to force you to throw into small, minute holes in the secondary. If Ewers does that early on, Washington's screwed. They got no chance. Because at that point, they're going to get impatient because they're giving up 7, 8, 10-yard chunks, and Ewers is just taking it. Eventually, you're going to get antsy, and, hey, let's roll the dice and bring 5 or 6. Well, now you're man coverage, and now he can take the deep shots, and that's where I think Washington gets into trouble.
John, Jatavian Sanders was asked earlier today about, are you leaning on going pro? What is your thought process? And his answer was, well, let's see how this goes. That if we went out and we win the national championship, it makes it really easy. I'll just go pro. If we don't, I'll have something to think about with regards to we didn't finish the deal, and so maybe I'll come back. From your perspective of the draft eligible players that have decisions to make for Texas, and there's a lot of them.
Yeah.
Who are the guys that you think would be best served to go back to school for another year? And who do you think, like Byron Murphy seems absolutely set. He's coming out. I think he's even going, he's already accepted a Senior Bowl invitation. Yep. Who would you think should go ahead and come out, and who do you think should stay?
Sanders is an interesting one. One of the things about guys staying at the University of Texas, and it's a little bit of a game of guts poker, is the fact that they'll get 12 games, well, how many ever games they're playing in the SEC. That's going to help a player's status. Going into the SEC, hey, you did in the Big 12, you walked over to the SEC, and doing it in the SEC, that's really going to open some eyes. So, Sanders was one, and I don't know how healthy he was this year, if at all. I don't know that he was 100% healthy all year long. I think whether Texas wins or not the national championship, if Sanders is able to show that A, he's healthy, B, as he is healthy, he is a major, major weapon, it might serve him best to come to the NFL. And I know I hate to say that for Longhorns fans, but the NFL is looking for guys like him. They want a pass-catching weapon like him, a guy that can put his hand in the dirt. And this, I don't think, just right now as it sits, as I'm looking at my 2024 class at tight end, Brock Bowers is Brock Bowers. After that, it's really not a great class of tight ends. And I got a feeling there's going to be a half dozen teams that are going to be looking for a pass-catching weapon. So Murphy's out. I think Murphy's going to be a first-rounder. And I think it's going to be I think he and Sweat are probably both going to go in the first round. So that makes a lot of sense. I think, and I've heard, I don't know if he's made a full decision. I haven't heard or not. But I think Quinn Ewers has got the decision to make because there have been a lot more quarterbacks that have gone back to college, went to the transfer portal, and decided, you know what, I'm staying another year. Riley Leonard goes to Notre Dame. Dylan Gabriel goes to Oregon. I don't think I'm taking either one of those quarterbacks before Quinn Ewers, but it just makes the path a little bit easier. We don't know what McCarthy's doing. We don't know what Shedeur Sanders is doing. It sounds like both are going back, but we don't know. So Quinn Ewers shows it off against Washington, gets a national championship, and does it again against Michigan or Alabama. I think there are going to be NFL teams dying to get their hands on Quinn Ewers. I mean, look around the league right now and how many different backup quarterbacks are playing in the league. I mean, do you want Jimmy Garoppolo playing for you down the stretch, or do you want a young Quinn Ewers seeing whether he can be the guy for you? So to me, Ewers might have the most difficult decision. Now, I've heard he's leaning to stay, and I don't know if he's announced that fully, so you guys can tell me that. But you can always change your mind up until the 15th. But I think he's probably got the most difficult decision of all is Ewers.
Yeah, and it hasn't been officially announced yet. That's a good point. John, let me sneak one in here. We got a super chat about the Texans for you. 499 says, what's the mood in Houston in that locker room with Stroud on the mend? Are they confident we can still make the playoffs with all these remaining injuries? What do you see with the Texans?
Yeah, in 7 we trust, man. In 7 we trust. Having him in the lineup just makes everything else, hey, you got this injury, you got that injury. Oh, but we got CJ, we're good. Now, it doesn't mean that we're going to end up winning games, but we believe in that guy. And I think the other thing, too, and he talked about it, I mentioned it the other day on radio, the fact that the concussion, albeit not great, but sitting out a couple weeks is good for him because he was getting the hell beat out of him. And because of that, he even said at this press conference, he's like, my shoulder got some rest. I feel much, much better. And that was music to my ears. I don't want to say he needed the 2 weeks. He needed the 2 weeks. And we got out of there 1-1 with some Case Keenum magic up in Tennessee. And then we ran into the buzzsaw that is Joe Flacco. But, I mean, did you ever think – when was the last time I was on with you guys? Would I have ever – if you would have said, hey, you're going to say this after week 17, I would have been like, all right, y'all need to be committed.
Yeah.
Y'all need to be – nobody saw that one coming. But – then you
it's true. That's the funny part. Is like he is a legit. He's a buzzsaw. Like that is an accurate phrasing.
He's the best damn player on the field at 39 years old. I watched it up close and I'm like, he's just dealing. He's just dealing, and I'm like, it was incredible to watch up close. I don't want the Browns to do. If we get knocked out of the playoffs or whatever, I'll be cheering for Joe Flacco and the Browns because first of all, he's not Deshaun Watson. Secondly, I think he's one hell of a story. So to the point of what's the mood in the locker room, I think guys are starting to get a little bit of pep in their step. I always have said that weeks 13, 14, 15, 16 are the hardest weeks in the NFL. These guys are beat the hell up. It's tough games. They're barely practicing. You see them shuffling down the hallway, and they can barely make it from the meeting room, the locker room, out to the field. And most of them are thinking, man, just get me to Sunday. And then you've got Thanksgiving, you've got Christmas, you got the holidays, you got all that going on. It's a tough time. With 2 games left, you can see the end, at least the end of the regular season. And then the playoffs just give you a whole nother B12 shot. So these guys, seeing CJ last Friday in their meetings was a huge boost for them. Seeing him out of practice this week was absolutely massive. Everybody is so pumped and excited for CJ, for the team. And so we just got to go put it on the Titans on Sunday. What we have to figure out, though, is what we do without Tank Dell. We still haven't figured that out yet. We have not figured out how to really be a good offense without Tank. And I thought I might say that, but a 5'8", 165-pound dude, we've missed him badly. He's one of the toughest guys we have. He's CJ's best friend. They really got to figure that out if they want to make any noise over the next couple of weeks on into the playoffs. They make it, but we win 2, we're in, and I think they know that. And with Stroud coming back, I think that's put a little bit more pep in the step. But it's certainly setting up for Week 18 in Indianapolis. That is a whole hell of a lot different than last year's. Last year's game was huge for a particular reason. This Week 18 up in Indy could be huge for a totally different reason. But got to win this one to get there. We lose this one against the Titans, and could make that Week 18 game moot, which we don't definitely want to have. So, yeah, good moods here with CJ playing on Sunday.
There we go.
Last question, and it's the most selfish question I've ever asked you, John. Dalton Schultz is one of my fantasy tight ends. In the last couple of weeks, it's been like, well, there's no CJ, so I don't know if I'm going to take the risk. This week, CJ's back. Matchups aside, I'm back. I'm okay to go with Dalton now, right? That's all I needed.
Yep. Yes, Dalton Schultz, absolutely.
Say no more.
Man, what?
Say no more.
I mean, I know there are a lot of Cowboys fans out there going, well, we got Jake Ferguson, etc. Dalton, and thank you for Dalton. He has been tremendous. I love the guy. We've had him on radio a couple times. He's hilarious. He's funny in so many different ways. But when the front five protects CJ on their own and lets Dalton get out in routes, he's been tremendous this year. When that front five is struggling and Dalton has to block, it's not been as good. But I think CJ will definitely look him up. That's one of the ways to fill in the shoes of Tank. And so we need Dalton on Sunday for sure. And Dalton and CJ haven't played together since the game before the Jets. I can't remember the Broncos game. He went out like the fourth quarter of the Broncos game, and that was maybe even before that. So they haven't played together for a while. So I would imagine those two are linking up. So hopefully get you some points for your fantasy Super Bowl, Jeff.
Love to hear that. Thank you very much, Santa John. I appreciate
That's right.
it.
John, real quick, just to get you on the record after the discussion, Texas, Bama in a rematch, or
yes.
Yeah, okay,
yeah, absolutely. I think Texas is going to win that 34-27. I think they only get into trouble if Penix is playing some playground ball and they get too confident that one guy stops Adunze. One guy is not going to stop Adunze. They've got to devote multiple people to slow him down. He's that good. In fact, I hope he falls to us in the draft. That would be fantastic. But we need Cleveland to lose for us to get a higher draft pick. I think Adunze is that good. And I think Alabama is going to narrowly win this. I think 21-18, 21-17, something of that magnitude, 3-4 points. I think Michigan makes it interesting early, but I think Alabama just wears them down in the third, fourth quarter. And I feel like Milroe will get the final salvo against Bill O'Brien, setting up Texas, Alabama here, which would be awesome to have Texas and Jalen Milroe, their backyard meeting again. That would be freaking awesome on Monday the 8th.
That'd be something. And just you tell them to get ready at NRG if Texas is coming to face Bama in the title game. You're right with Milroe, and oh my God, talk about a lot of crazy stories. That is John Harris. Check out footballtakeover.com for the best football info out there. He's breaking it all down like nobody else. John, we appreciate it. Safe travels until we talk to you again, man, and Happy New Year.
Absolutely, guys. Yeah, I'm going to have my keys to the game going up this weekend for Texas and Washington and Alabama, Michigan. So definitely check that out. Appreciate you guys. And enjoy the game and enjoy New Orleans for sure.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, brother.
See you guys.